Hi, this is Kevin Trainer, and welcome to my tutorial on how to install Pycharm on macOS. And I'm recording this tutorial for students in two of my classes. I'm teaching, this is now the beginning of the fall semester 2018. It's early September 2018. And I'm teaching Python related courses at two of the iSchools. And at one, I'm teaching Intro to Application Development, which is a Python programming course. And at the other, I'm teaching application development using web frameworks, which is primarily a Django course. And so a couple things here. One is that I finally decided that I was going to just have one set of tutorials to set up tools. So this is a tutorial for both classes. I'll go through the stuff for the Python development, and then anybody who needs to hang around can hang around for the Django development stuff. This is a tutorial primarily for students in my classes. If you're a YouTuber and you found your way here, it's probably not that applicable for you. You're certainly welcome to stay, but only stay after having heard that warning. Again, it's September 2018. I would like this tutorial to have a life of a good year or so. So that means that when you, the student, are playing the tutorial, you might find that even though I'm using the very latest software in terms of macOS, and we work with Anaconda, so the latest installation for Anaconda and the latest software for Pycharm, you may find that there's a newer version of one of those things available for you when you go to do the install. And I'm going to say, unless I've warned you off it in class, go right ahead and use the newest of everything. Okay, so that might mean that some of the dialogues are slightly different, but typically you do better with the newer than with the older once there's new stuff out. All right, so the version of Pycharm that we're going to use is the professional version. I used to use different versions for different courses. But I don't do that anymore, and we're going to be using the professional version. And to do that, one needs to get a free license that's available to university people, including faculty people and students. So there's a page here where you can apply for your free license. Okay. And it's a really good deal. You get a free license to all of these products. Pycharm is the one that we're going to be using. Okay. The only other one that I use right now is DataGrip, which is a fairly new product for them, and it's for working with relational databases, and I've not got really any students working on it yet, but I've been having some fun with it for now. So once you get your license, you're going to have an account at JetBrains. So we're going to have to go to that account to install the software. So how do we do that? Well, we go to account.jetbrains.com, and you you can see that I'm already logged in. Okay, let me log out so you can see what the login looks like. Okay, so you have to put in your username and password. The username is your university email address, and of course the password is the one you set up for the account. I've got this remembered by my browser, so I'm just going to do that and sign in. And again, here's the list of all the software you potentially could download and install. And your license is typically good for a year. And as long as you have a university email address, you can you can apply to renew it. And you can see here that I'm valid through about a year from now, and I don't have a link to renew it. But when I came here earlier today, I had an expired license. It had expired last March, and I did have a link to renew. Okay, so so long as you keep your university address, you should be able to keep on going. Now, how are we going to download and install this? Well, let's go up at the top, right under the title JetBrains Product Pack for Students. There's a download link, so let's click on that. And you can see here there's a lot of stuff that we could install. All those products that we saw, plus I think a couple of other things. And you could download them all individually and you can install them, or there's a really cool app called JetBrains Toolbox that allows you to install one or more of these applications and keep on top of the updates. And it keeps track of your license information. It's a really sweet little app. So that's what I'm going to have you do. I'm going to have you click the link that says Toolbox app. And it's starting to download here. And it knows that we're on a Mac. When I did the tutorial earlier for Windows, it was able to detect that we were on Windows. And it downloads pretty quickly, I guess. We're about half done here. I'm just going to pause you until we're ready to go again. So that's embarrassing. What I was actually seeing down here to the left was the instructions for how to do the download. So it's not downloading at all. We have to click on free download. So let's click on that. Alright, and if we go down to the bottom, we can see that the .dmg file has now downloaded. Very good. So I'm going to click on that. And before I do any, instead of just going there, I'm just going to open a Finder and go to Downloads. Now I've downloaded a lot of stuff today, but somewhere should be our JetBrains toolbox, and here it is. JetBrains Toolbox version 1.11 blah blah. So let's double click on that and fire up the graphical installer. And it popped up on another one of my monitors, so let me pull it over. Okay, and this is the classic, you grab the toolbox on the left and you drag it into applications, and it did a little bonky sound, which I think means that it's done. And how can we confirm that? Well, we could go to applications and see if JetBrains Toolbox is there. So applications, Let's go down to the J's. Got a lot of stuff on here. JetBrains Toolbox. So I can close the Graphical Installer. Okay. And I'm going to close the browser for right now. And there's my last tutorial. Put that over to the side. And if I want to run JetBrains Toolbox, I'm just going to highlight it and give it the double click. And so yeah, okay, I want to open it. And here it is over on the right. And what's nice is it looks a lot like the version that I just saw when I did the Windows install. So the version consistency between these two platforms seems to be good. The JetBrains tools are pretty much all implemented with Java, so pretty much we're seeing the same code, but it's wrapped in a layer of niceties that make it interact the right way with whatever operating system we're on. Okay, so at this point we can choose to install any of these products. Let's look at the Pycharm products. Okay, so we're going to install Pycharm Professional for a couple reasons. One, we have a license, so why don't we do it? That's the paid version. Why don't we get some free services? Now, it's a little bit of overkill for my my application development course because we don't, we could use one of the two free versions. We could use Pycharm Community or Pycharm Edu. The problem is I just want one set of tutorials. So if you want to have the same product I'm using, then you definitely want to install Pycharm Professional, even if you're in the Introduction to Application Development course. And if you're in the course where we're going to use Django, you don't have any other choice because the free versions don't yet have the Django tools. Okay, so if you want to be a Django developer on Pycharm, and it's really one of the preferred environments for Django, then you're going to need Professional. So why don't we click Install, and it's checking for updates, and it's going to do the install. And I am going to, well, it looks like it's only got 2 minutes left, 1 minute left. It's always hard to trust these things. But if it happens in a minute, then I'm not going to pause it. I'm just going to let you watch. So while that's happening, let's talk about what else I want to install. I'm also going to want to install that database tool, DataGrip. And I think they're in alphabetical order, so I'm actually going to come back and install that once I get the install done for Pycharm Professional. Now, can you install more than one version of Pycharm? Yeah, I do it all the time. In fact, I'd like to, sometimes I'd like to see what's up with Pycharm Edu, so I'll install that too. But I'm not going to show you how to do that. The only thing we really need for now is Pycharm Professional. And you'll see that what's happened is that Pycharm Professional has popped out of the list of what we can install, and if we roll back to the top, we'll see that it's on the list of things that are installed. And if we click on this, it'll start the program. Okay? And I'm also going to install DataGrip, but I'm not going to make you watch me. So I'll do that later. Okay. All right. So now that it's installed, and the version we have is 2018.2.2. Um, the way that they control the versions is that they begin with the year name. So we've already had two major versions in 2018 and two minor releases, or one additional minor release on in of 2018.2. So sometimes when you start it up, it'll remind you that you need to update it, and you can come here and update it. Or there's a check for updates that you can do as well. Okay, so this is a place we could start it. We could just click here, and it's going to start it. And it's coming up on my other monitor, so let me pull this down here. So we got a splash screen up there, and then we got this. Now I've got a lot of different projects that I use all the time, but we're going to create some new ones. Okay. But let's close this for a second, and let's say what I really like to do is I really like to have an icon in the dock. Okay. I don't need an icon in the dock for a toolbox, because up here at the top it installs an icon for toolbox at the top. So if you want to start it through the toolbox, you can come up here every time, click on the toolbox, and then click on Pycharm Professional or whatever other thing that you have installed. Okay. But what I want is I want a conventional icon down here. Well, if I go look for Pycharm in the applications folder, there should be a Pycharm Professional here somewhere. N-O-P. Don't make a liar out of me here. Oh, well, that's not how we're going to do it. I think I used to be able to do that. Now, what we do here is we go up. We are going to have to start it with the toolbox icon up at the top. We're going to start Pycharm Professional, and you can see we get an icon down in the dock. And why don't we right-click on that icon, and we'll say Options, Keep in Dock. So now, even when I stop this, and again, it's come up on my other monitor, I apologize for that. Even when I stop this, there's going to be a Pycharm icon down in the dock. So that's how I like to do it. I fire up Pycharm, and away I go. Something that I forgot to show people when I was doing the Anaconda Navigator is how to create an icon for the Anaconda Navigator in the dock. So let's just find that. That is actually in alphabetical order. So you can fire up Anaconda Navigator with a double click. And while that's loading up, we can go down to the dock where there's an icon for it already, and right click and say Options, Keep in Dock. Okay. And it looks like Anaconda Navigator is going to come up on my other monitor as well. I've got 3 monitors, and it tends to want to come up on, I guess, the one it was on most recently. So Anaconda Navigator is a little slow coming up here. See if we can drag it. Nope. There's no drag in the initializing icon. I have to confess, we're doing a lot right now. We are encoding the last of the tutorials that we did, and that takes a lot of CPU power. Okay, so we're doing a lot of things at once. Oh, here's Anaconda Navigator, and we've already taken care of the icon. And I just want to remind you that the environments that we have are plain old Python development and Django 2 development, and we're going to use those with Pycharm Professional. Okay, so much for Anaconda right now, and so much for the Finder. So here we are. We fired up Pycharm, okay, and when you start, you're not going to have any of this list of projects, so you're going to want to create a new project, okay. And what we're going to talk about is that what are we going to do if we just want a plain old Python development project, which is what we're going to do in our application development course. So we come to this dialog box, and there's really two sides. On the left side, it's your type of project. Okay, there are a lot of possible projects that you could create. Pure Python is the default, and that's what we want. Now, over on the right-hand side, we want to do two things. First, we have to pick a name for our project. The name for our project is going to be the name for the directory that the project is going to live in. Okay, and unfortunately, it's out at the end of this path. So if you don't change it, you're going to get a project called Untitled, which is probably not what you want. So let's back up over Untitled, and let's call it first. Let's call it our first Python project. And it's kind of interesting is that because of something I said before, the last time I had this installed, we're not really, I'm probably not pointed at the same directory that you are. Okay, within users and my username, if we open it up, we'll probably see, if we go down, probably see that there's a directory called Pycharm Projects. Okay, and let's open that. Okay, so that's probably what you're going to see. You're going to see this Untitled. So let's try to match what you're going to see. Okay, so again, let's call it our first Python project. And we're almost there, but of course, what we haven't done is we haven't said which virtual environment are we going to associate with this project such that it's going to find the right version of Python, and whatever other right version of the Python interpreter, and then whatever other Python projects, Python packages we need. So we want to go to this little triangle next to Project Interpreter, and here's how we're going to do it. Now, what's interesting is it's pointing to some environments that I deleted off the machine so I could start fresh. So that's not going to help you. So okay, so we want. Do we want to create a new virtual environment? No, we don't. we want to use an existing interpreter that's part of an existing virtual environment. So we click that radio button, go over and click the dot dot dot. We get into a sub dialog. And again, over here on the left, you have to say what kind of environment you're using. So we're not creating one, but we have to say, oh, it's a Conda environment. Okay, and it's pointing to some old one. No, that's actually looking pretty good. Anaconda 3 ends Django 2 development. So that looks pretty good. But let's say this didn't come right up looking like this. Okay, how can we go and find it? Okay, well, it's not as hard as it might seem. It's going to be under users, your username. Let's open that up. And we see a lot of things here because I've made the hidden files and directories visible. But if we come down here, the directory we're looking for is Anaconda 3. That's where all of our Anaconda stuff has installed. Okay. And under Anaconda 3, we're looking for envs for environments. Let's open that up. Okay, and we've got a directory for each of the two. Okay, and of course the one that we're looking for is again plain old Python development. That wasn't the one that we had, so that's good. Now you might think that you could highlight the directory and you'd be done, but look at the dialog that you're in. It says select Python interpreter. So what he wants to know is where's the Python interpreter within the directory that you're pointing at. So we have to open that directory. And if we go all the way down to the bottom here, it's oh, this is a little bit different on Mac than it is in Windows. Windows, you go all the way down to the bottom, but in Mac, you go to the bin directory, open that, and what we're looking for is we're looking for a file that is a shortcut to Python. So we want one that's just called Python. And where are we? It's just here, Python. This little arrow and the question mark, that's what it means. It's a shortcut. It's really pointing to one of these other files, Python 3.6.6 or whatever. But the thing to do is to go for this. It acts as an alias for whatever version of Python you have here. So we want just the plain old Python here. And notice how the OK button is all of a sudden turned on. Okay, before we got down this far, the OK button wasn't available. So let's click OK. And now we're back, and we've got Anaconda 3 M's plain old Python development. That looks fine. Make available to all projects, especially when I'm doing kind of plain old Python development for a course like Intro to Application Development. I might have one virtual environment that I'm using for all of my projects, or certainly a lot of my projects. So if we click this to make it available to all projects, it's going to make it easier to choose in the future. So that's it. Let's say OK. All right. So this looks pretty good. It's an existing interpreter, plain old Python development, Python 3.6. It's a little disconcerting that we've got some red stuff up here, but you notice it's part of the dialog where we haven't pushed the radio button, so I'm not going to be too concerned about that right now. So it's a pure Python project, the proper existing interpreter that's in the proper env, plain old Python development, and let's click create. And guess what? It opened up on the other monitor for us. So let's pull that down. At least it's consistent today. I'll say that. And so look down at the bottom right. This is pretty consistent among these Python tools these days, and you can see that it's scanning and indexing and installing. There isn't a whole lot to install for a plain old Python project, but here it's set the directories up. It has some external libraries it's pointed to. It has all of that kind of stuff. Okay, so how do we create the simplest of Python programs? Well, we always go over and we click on the name of the project, our first Python project, and then let's right-click and say New. And what we're looking for is a Python file. We want a Python module or script file, depending on what you want to call it. And let's do the classic hello world. And the way we name Python modules is we put them in all lowercase and we separate the words with underscores. We're just going to say hello world and we're going to say OK. And it's going to open that up. So now it's ready for us to type in our code. Okay. And we're going to, in our application development class, we're going to have a convention of putting a couple of comments up front. Now, comments are just that. They're comments that are not executable code. The first thing we're going to say is we're going to say what the file name is. Now, this is something that they do in our textbook. So the file name is hello_world.py. Even though we typed in only hello world, it knew it was a Python type of program, so it gave the extension .py. So right now it thinks that we're trying to type in some Python code instead of a comment, and we're getting a red underline. It doesn't like that. So how could we toggle this into a comment? Well, on the Mac, it's command/. Okay, that's good. The other convention that we're going to have is the second line is always going to be a statement of intention about what this program is about, and that's a pretty good convention for now. So let's create a comment line right in the beginning, command/. Okay, could we have typed the £? Yeah, we could. And the statement of intention is the classic hello world introductory program. Okay, that's what we're trying to create. And we usually put 2 blank lines after that, and now we need some Python code. Now, when we get to the course itself, we're going to learn about all kinds of conventions about where to put your code and what to name things and all that. But for right now, we're just going to use that print statement again. So it turns out that whatever code you just put here in the module, and it's not inside of any other constructs like a function or a class, it's going to be executed. So if we want to print hello world, okay, and if you're following along with the textbook that we use in the Introduction to Application Development, the author follows the convention that he puts all character strings in double quotes. So he would say double quote hello, comma, world, exclamation. Okay. Now, for those of you who are going to be working on the Django course, you'll see that the author of the textbook for that class He's part of another pretty large group of Python programmers who like the idea of just putting character strings into apostrophes. So it's certainly your choice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change it to apostrophes because I've been converted by that school of people, and I just use apostrophes. Okay? And I'm going to let my students do what they think is the right thing to do. Okay? All right, so we have that. Now, do we have to save that? I can't get over the idea that these things automatically save, and they do actually in this product. I usually have one blank line at the end. Okay, so do we have to save it? Well, if you really want to, you can do a Command S to force it to save again. But it's probably been saved for a long time before we did that. Okay, so how are we going to get it to run? Well, sometimes you'll see a play button right here at the top of the gutter. Sometimes you'll see a play button up at the top here that's lit. Okay? Sometimes you can go up here to the menu and you can click on Run, and then you can go down there. What you always seem to be able to do is come down and right-click in the editor and see it says Run Hello World. And we're going to run that. And it's going to open up a console. And we say console, this is like if we were doing it at the command line, this would be what would happen at the command line. So we would type in the command line to run the program, and then it would say back hello world. Okay, so this is sort of a simulation of the command line console, and that worked just great. Okay, great. What other stuff might we want to look at here? Well, let's close this console. How do we do that? Well, usually somewhere down here there's an X. Okay, I found an X to click on. It wasn't where I expected it to be, but I was able to close it. Okay, so what if we're in here and we just want to work with the Python interpreter for a while, and we want to open up the Python interpreter and we want it to be in our virtual environment? Well, we're just going to come down here to the left, the bottom left, and we're going to click on Python console, and this Python console is just the interpreter fired up in our virtual environment, which is quite nice. You can see it's using Anaconda 3M's plain old Python development bin Python, so it's certainly in the right environment. And if we say something like print, and let's give an expression like 99 plus 1. Okay, and we come to the end and hit return, and it does the math and it prints 100. Okay, well that's good. Now, how could we get out of this? Well, one way to get out of this is to come over here and click on the X. I wonder if you can quit, just type in quit like we've been doing. Quit. See that work. Okay, so it stopped the process, but it hasn't closed the window. So to close the window, you need to click on the X. Okay, so we've got one perfectly good program. We can create as many as we want. That's all fine. We'll learn how to do a lot of things in the course. So what happens when you're ready for your next project? Okay. Well, let's close the current one. You can just come up here to the upper left and click on the red X. And in the macOS version, you pop out to this higher level dialog again. So let's say we want to create our second Python project. Let's say create new project. Okay. And let's say it's going in Pycharm projects. That's good. Okay. And we wanted, and it's a pure Python project. That's good. And we're just going to call this our second Python project. Okay, that looks good. And let's, now are we ready to create? Well, we're not. Because we want to make sure that we have the right interpreter. We want to make sure that we're in the right environment. So let's click on this little a triangle and see where we are. And it says, oh, we're going to use an existing interpreter. It's a Python 3.6 and it's plain old Python development. Gosh, that's just what we want. Okay. So you can typically see what you've used, provided that you click the box that you wanted to share it with other projects, which we did. That's going to be here to choose from. Okay. If in fact we wanted to use another, we wanted to use a different virtual environment and point to the Python interpreter in there, then we would click on the dot dot dot. So now we have everything that we need and we're fine. Okay, now something you could do if you'd like to make the settings for how you create a project really sticky. Okay, you can actually go up if you want to see the settings for the project that you're in. You can go up to the menu and click on Pycharm Preferences, and you go into Project over here and Project Interpreter, and this shows us that we're in plain old Python development, and we see all the different things that we see. Okay, and we can see that it's we've got Python 3.6.6. That's what we want. Okay, so and we could come in and we could change that. I mean, if we were pointed at the wrong environment, we could go point at the right environment. It's not only when you create the project that you can configure it to work with a particular virtual environment. Okay, well, we're not going to change that. So something that you can actually do is if you go up to Pycharm Preferences, there's some place where you can set the default for new projects. It's easier to set it. Let's look at where this is. File, settings. It's easier to do in the Windows version, but it is a way to set the defaults for how you're going to configure a new project if you're going to do a whole bunch in a row. For us, it's going to be enough that there are, once we use a virtual environment, it's going to be enough that the next time we create a project, it's going to be on the drop-down list. Okay, that's sticky enough for our purposes. So that's all you need to know if you're taking the application development course. You can decide to leave us at this point, or you can hang around and see what's going on in the Django world. So what would we do if we had a Django project? And again, things keep going up to my other monitor. Okay, so how do we create a new Django project? Okay, so I just want to point out now that a lot of the courseware that we use in um, the the application development with what is it? Web development with application frameworks, the Django course. A lot of the courseware has you creating new Django projects at the command line. Okay. And is it okay to do that? Yeah, it's fine to do that. I prefer to come into Pycharm and create a new project here. Uh, are they compatible with each other? Yeah, the code that actually creates the project infrastructure, the directories and everything that's in them, uh, it's created by um, one of the programs that's a part of the Django infrastructure. So if you're doing this at the command line, you're probably invoking it explicitly. If you're doing it here in Pycharm, you're doing it implicitly. But there's only one kind of Pycharm project for any version of Pycharm, any particular version of Pycharm. So let's say we want to create a new project. Okay. I keep saying Pycharm project. I meant Django. I apologize for that. It's been a long recording day. So again, we've come to the new project dialog box, and we've got to choose on the left what kind of project that we want, and on the right, we need to configure it. So it's not a pure Python project, it's a Django project. It's the second option. And what's interesting is you'll see there are more things to configure. If we were up on pure Python, see, we only have to configure the interpreter. As soon as we come down to Django, there are more settings. Okay? So we're going to have to do three things on the right side. We're going to have to make sure we remember to properly name it. Okay? We're going to have to give it the proper interpreter, which means to point it to the right environment. And we're going to have to pick a couple of more settings. Okay, so the first part, let's give it a proper project name. Let's call this our first Django project. Okay? Okay, so, and again, it's currently going into Pycharm projects, which is where yours is probably pointed at. Okay, so let's get the right interpreter set up. So we have an existing interpreter. That's fine, because we don't create our new environments. Could you create them here? Sure you could. I just like using Anaconda Navigator to create the environment. So we've only got one way that we're doing it. Okay. So we want an existing interpreter or environment. It's not this one here. Let's take the drop down. That's the only one available. So we're going to have to click the ... Okay. And where are we going to go? First of all, before we go out there, do we want to make this available to all projects? Yeah, we can. I just want to point out that different Pycharm projects have different groups of packages that they're going to require. Like, for instance, in our Django course, the Django girls tutorials that we're going to do, they're going to be using Django 2. Okay, the Easy University project that we're going to do, that's going to be using Django 2. The tutorial from the textbook, Django Unleashed, I think that uses some version of Django 1.8. Well, obviously, a particular environment can only have one version of Django in it. So it's more likely that you're to have uh, custom environments for each of your Django projects. We'll do some sharing in the beginning of the course, but it's more likely that you would have a custom one for each of your projects. But make it available to other projects? Yeah, I don't care. Okay, but now we have to point to the proper one. So go over here to the right and click on the dot dot dot. Okay, and remember, where do we find the environments? Well, under users, under our username, open that up. And again, we're seeing all these supposedly hidden directories. So it's a long way down on mine. And we want to go down to Anaconda 3. That's where Anaconda is. And we want to go down to envs. That's where the environments are. And Django 2 development. That's the one we want. And we can't stop here. Look, if you highlight that, OK is not loaded up. You have to say which Python interpreter to use. So we're going to open up Django 2 development. And in the Mac and Linux world, what we're looking for is in the bin directory. So open that up, and we want the little shortcut that's just called Python. It looks like a file. It's a shortcut to a file. It probably points to 3.6.6, but we're just going to click on Python and look at the OK light up, and we're just going to click on OK. OK. So what does that look like? Well, it says Anaconda 3 envs Django 2 development bin Python. That's just what we want. So let's click on OK. All right. So let's see. We've got our first Django project. It's a Django project. Okay. We have the proper environment and interpreter. Are we done? No, we're not. Now, have I clicked on create accidentally here? You betcha. Okay, because you have to remember that you have more settings to configure. Okay. So the template language, Django has more than one templating language. We're going to use the native one called the Django templating language, but there is another one that's at least talked about in our textbook called Jinja 2. We're not using that. Our templates folder is going to be called templates. That's the standard. And when you create a project, you have to say the name of the first application that you're going to have. And we're just going to call this first app. Okay. And do we want to enable Django admin functions? Yeah, we do. Okay. So now we're ready to click create. Okay. Well, let's see. We're going to learn what all these do. We have a settings.py and urls.py. Let's open up the project structure and we'll see underneath the directory called the same as our project, our first Django project, we have a directory for our app, first app. Okay, and these are a lot of the standard Python programs that are going to make up first app. And then we also have a directory again with the project name. And here the ones that are going to be important for us are the settings and the urls.py, which it's already open for us. Okay. Now there's a really important file here called manage.py. Manage.py is a utility program that was put in here for us. And manage.py does a lot of services for us. But one of the biggest ones it does is it runs the development server. So if we have an app, if we have a site and we want to see it, well, we're going to have to fire up the development server. Now, there's a couple of ways to do this. The easiest way to do this is to go up to the menu and click on Tools, and there is Run Manage.py task. Now, if you don't have this, you've not properly configured a Django project. Well, how could you fix that? Well, you could fix that by going up to your project name and right-clicking, and oh, you know what? I think you can just go up here. Just go to Pycharm Preferences. You can just go there. That's probably as good as any. And we've got the project. So we open up our project, and let's say that you did the interpreter. Well, let's say you did the interpreter just fine. Here's the thing for our project. You did the interpreter fine, but let's say that you didn't do these tools. I'm sorry, languages and frameworks. That's the other thing we configured. So if we click on Django, here's a lot of Django stuff that was automatically set for us. If this is not properly set, then it's not going to be a Django project. Like, for instance, enable Django support. If it's not a Django project, it probably won't look like that. Okay? Now, so this is fine. So how do we run the development server? Well, again, go up to Tools, Run Manage.py task. Okay. And what we have is we have a little console down here, and there's a bunch of sub commands for manage.py, and it's kind of running it like a command line interface here. And the one that we want to run is called run server. Run server. Okay, and you can add some details now, but we're going to say enter and then enter again. And it has actually started up the development server. And if we click on this link here, it's going to fire up the default browser, which on my machine is now Chrome. Your machine is probably Safari. And it came up on another monitor, so I'll pull it over here and you'll see what we have. So it says the install works successfully. Congratulations. You can see it's got little Django graphics. It says Django, view the release notes for Django 2.1. So we got the right version of Django. We've got links to things like Django documentation in the Django community. That's all we're going to get. And where did this come up? Well, the Django development server and Django servers generally run on port 8000 unless you've got more than one. So if you've got more than one, you usually start to put them on 8001, 8002, 8003. And 127.0.0.1 is what's also called local host. This is the local. This is a local machine. Okay, so I think we could also say local host 8000. Let's do that. Local host colon 8000, and we get the same thing. Okay. All right, that's good. Let's close that. All right, and close Chrome. Everything's good. Now, there are times when you want to stop the development server because you want to you either want to close up shop or you want to do something like that. Uh, I find that on the Mac, sometimes it works well and sometimes it doesn't work well. Um, if we were really at a command line console, well, we could type in Control C and it would quit. And so you can see here, it doesn't really do anything. What you can see is on the development server, the log, the HTTP log prints out here. That's the one access that we did to get that page. Okay, so that looks fine. But so how could you stop it? Well, this red stop up button seems to work fine. Okay. But before that, I want to show you that sometimes I have the problem that I can't get the development server to stop. So what do I do then? Well, I actually go. The development server is not something that you can see in a list of applications, so you can't go up. A lot of times, if you have a very visible app, you can just go up to force quit, and you can pick something like Pycharm and you can blow it away. And that would kind of do the job, but that's not what we're looking for. What you need is you need the performance monitor, okay? The activity monitor, okay? And where do you find that? Well, you find that under Applications, Utilities, Activity Monitor, and you fire that up. And what we can see here is, I just want to point out, if you look at the activity monitor, where is our development server? It is right here. It's a Python 3.6 instance all by itself. And if we succeed in just clicking the red button and closing this, then Python 3.6 will disappear. So let's go over here and click the red button. And let's look at our activity monitor again. And did it go away? Yeah, it went away. So, and we got our prompt back. Okay, so that's good. Now, my experience is it gets pretty sticky sometimes, and I've got to go to the activity monitor and highlight the line, whatever line it is. Let's say it was the Pycharm line, and go up here and click the red X. Now, that will stop the development server for sure. Okay? The development server can be one sticky little booger. But don't you just love a piece of software that wants to keep on keeping on? There's a lot of other services that we get under manage.py. So there are times that we want to stop the development server to get those done. And if you want to close this window, you can go down to the bottom. My overall window is not big enough, so I have to go down to this double arrow, and I see an X, and I close the X, and it should have closed that. Now, I just want to point out, you can close the console all by itself without stopping the server, and the server's still running. Okay, so just closing that little console is not everything that you have to do to stop that development server. You can come back and you can come back in here and you say tools, run manage Pi, and you could find out that you could get like another console, and you can find out that you could say run server, and it might say the server is already running. It didn't now because we properly stopped it, but if we just, for instance, close this, and now we want to do it again. So let's say run a manage Pi task, and let's say we want to run server. maybe it stopped it. In my experience, it typically tells you that the server is already running, but apparently not this time. Okay, so it can get sticky. I want you to be prepared. Okay, there's one other part that we may want to use here. And this is one that works really well on the Mac version and not so well on the Windows version. We have alternatives in the Windows version. But if we click on Terminal, we're going to get a command line interface, just like we had opened up a terminal in the operating system. In that, as you can see, we're in the directory for our project. Okay? I just want to point out that we're not in the virtual environment for our project. How can I tell? Well, there's nothing to the left here. There's nothing in parens to the left of our prompt that says the name of the environment. So we can say conda env list the virtual environments. Okay, and then we could say, okay, we've got Django 2 development, so we could say conda activate Django 2 development. Okay, and how about this? It saw us going, and it says we still have we have to do some more work. And it says if your shell is bash or bourne, ours is a bash, enable conda for the current user with this. So we have to add this to our profile. So I'm going to go do that. I'm going to copy this. Or for all users, we could do it like this. So let's okay, so we could do this, and then we can just come down to the end, and we could paste that in. Okay, it's going to echo it, and that's going to make it go away. So I think we're okay. It put that into the profile for our user. So let's close this and come back. I think we're going to be fine. If we go to terminal and we say, I didn't like that, conda activate Django 2 development. There it is. Okay. Okay, so we had to do a little configuration before we could do that, so we have that there. So if we're in the right directory and we're in the right environment, well then we can run things. Like we could run the following thing. We could say Python manage.py. That's the name of what we've been running before. Manage.py is right over here. And then we could say, what do we want to do in there? We want to run server. And here we go. Now it complies that we haven't done all the migrations, and there's plenty to be learned and plenty to be done. But here we go. So if we click on this, we're gonna get that. So there are times in Django that you want to be working at the command line because you just want access to everything. And in the Windows environment, we have a whole separate prompt for that that's outside of Pycharm. But one of the things that is really nice about the Pycharm implementation on the Mac is that you can get into this terminal and you can do pretty much anything you want to do. Now that we're in a proper terminal, how do we stop this development server? Well, with a Control C. So we said Control C and it stopped the server. And what could we do here? We could say we want to exit and it's gone. All right, now a couple more things and we'll let you go. Okay, so we created our first Django project and we created it within Pycharm, and that's the way I usually do it. Okay, so and when we close that, we should come back up to this dialog, which all of a sudden was on another monitor. Okay, what happens when we go to create the next one? Well, it's a little bit easier. So we can go, we say we want it to be Django. Okay, again, we always have to remember to name the project. Say our second Django project. Okay. We have to give it the proper interpreter, but what's interesting is because we agreed to share this, it's pretty sticky. Now we can look here and we can say the Pycharm tool has already seen both of our virtual environments, and it wants to use the Django 2.1. That's just fine. And we remember we need to do the more settings, and the template language is going to be Django. The template folder templates is the right thing, and the application name it always wants to create the first Django app. Let's just call it second app because we already created the first app and the other one. We do want to check enable Django admin and then create. Okay, now how are you going to deal with projects that you created at the command line? You know, you were doing the Django Girls tutorial and you decided to follow it explicitly, and so it's not properly hooked up. How do you make sure it's a Django project? Well, you just to open the project, it's pretty easy. You just so you want to open, and I've got a Django Girls extensions. That's the second one that we do. So we highlight that and we open it, and it opens up, and it opened up on the totally third monitor. So it's pretty exciting. Okay, and here's where we are. All right. And this is looking a little different than I would have expected it to, but I don't know, maybe I was doing something funny the last time I was here. Okay. And look, it says that there's no Python interpreter configured for the project. Okay. Because, now, does it know that it's a Python project? Usually my test is to go up here and say tools, is there a run manage py.task? Well, I already had this configured before, but I deleted the virtual environment that this was attached to because I wanted to show you how to start from scratch. Okay, but you might come up here to Tools, and you might not see it's manage.py.task. If that's true, and it doesn't have a proper virtual environment, well, go up to Pycharm Preferences project and start working on things. So the project interpreter, you're going to go out and do all the stuff we learned how to before. You're going to have to navigate to setting it up with the right interpreter inside of the right environment. You typically don't have to change project structure. That's just a general thing. But you may need to go down to languages and frameworks, and let's click on languages and frameworks. And one of the options is Django. And eventually we're going to learn what all these things are. But the things that is the most important is enable Django support. So if you've created a project at the command line, and you went up to Tools and you didn't see the opportunity to run manage.py, it's probably because we haven't enabled Django support on it yet. Okay, so again, if you create them at the command line, you may have to do some configuration when you come in here. Okay, but all the same, you should be able to configure it so that the next time you come in, and every time after that, it's just a plain old Pycharm Django projects. So the structure of the files, the infrastructure files that are downloaded and included, things like manage.py and those kinds of things. There's manage.py. You get the same stuff when you create them at the command line with the tools that they talk about in our various textbooks and tutorials as you get when you create them with Pycharm. So it's the same stuff, but if you've created one at the command line and you come over here, it's probably not configured yet. So you're going to have to dither around with again, Pycharm Preferences. The first part's going to be project, and set the interpreter, and then you're going to go to languages and frameworks, and you're going to do this stuff for Django. If you set all that up, it ought to behave just like you created here inside of Pycharm. So that's it. That's enough to get you into plenty of trouble all by itself. So I'm going to wish you luck. I'll see you in a series of tutorials and classes that I'll be doing. And until then, I'm going to say bye. Bye-bye.